The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's hump day in the Riv. And for you watching us live on YouTube, I'm glad you could find us. And for those of you at 5 o'clock, if you want to watch us live, we'll get on a link. We'll make it as easy as possible for you. But as usual, we have a whole bunch of things to talk about. There's never any kind of
Chip, your mic might be too low.
Oh yeah, it is very low. It's actually in my lap.
So that would explain it.
Yeah, again, I had it. I was too busy reading all these newspaper articles before the show here. I don't even know what we want to start. Let's start with the. You want to start with something?
The recall.
Okay, let's start with the recall.
According to sources, Dan Rego either texted or called Will Flanagan at WSAR and advised him that he would not be running for mayor now. He's not going to turn in his papers. So that will take us down one candidate. Yeah,
I got a couple of calls from people who are apparently listening to the Will Flanagan show, who has also chosen not to run, which I think is a good idea since he didn't really do a great job. Not that he's a bad person. Again, let's not mix personalities with he's chosen not to run, so we've pared the field down. But let's get to something before we get to the local stuff. Massachusetts pension tension.
I knew you'd love to see that one.
Oh boy, I'll tell you, because this is the thing. You talk about people being victims. The average worker who works his whole life and gets a pension, and if they live too long, they're living on virtually nothing. Let me tell you something. As a member of the retirement board, the last time we checked, 60%, more than half of the city retirees, most of whom worked 30, 40 years, are making less than $25,000 a year. That's not even enough money that's gross income. Gross income. $25,000 a year. And when I read this, you don't know how angry I get, because you know what's wrong with the pension system? Do you remember the last show when I was reading Charlie Reese's column? It's the same problem. Politicians. Because, this is it. Massachusetts, some payouts hit $350,000. 1,000 retirees get over $100,000 a year annually. And then we look at this. Two former UMass medical junior chancellors, not the chancellor, are pulling down $347,000. 10 retirees, including Billy Bolger, the former Senate president, who left the Senate making $70 grand, got a job at UMass Dartmouth, immediately got a $200,000 a year pay raises and making in excess of $200,000. These are the people that kill the system. You're looking at one man who retired in '53 was still collecting, and others left working at 60. Those people are all well connected. They know how to game the system, and that's what disturbs me, because the people who are coming to work every day and paying into the system are the people who get victimized, because everybody wants the pension. They want they complain about the pension system, as do our great crack financial team. But when they leave, they're going to be getting in excess of $100 grand, or pretty damn close to $100 grand.
And that's okay.
And they didn't work full time most of their careers.
Right.
So that's the thing that really disturbs me. I just, when I see this, it just makes me crazy. I can't, because I see the people every day. I deal with those people every day. when they're calling me, they can't afford their medications, and they can't afford the increases in taxes, and they can't afford the increases in fees, and they're living on. As a matter of fact, at the last meeting we had of the Retirees Association, a former firefighter who I worked with, who actually, I believe, landed at the Normandy invasion. He's one of the last remaining World War II veterans. He's 97 years old. His pension is crap, absolute crap. He made the fatal mistake of living too long, and that's the problem. And the pension system is not geared to help people, because the most they can get for a COLA increase is $360. Now, $360 on a $17,000 pension, just the increase in pharmaceutical drugs wipes that out, plus the tax increase is double what you make. They're losing money every year. But people who are making $349,000 on their pension and $150,000, they don't need a pay raise for a very, very long time. They'd have to live to be about 470 before their pension started getting strained. You know, and that's what really disturbs me, because the people who are the victims are the people who did it the right way. They went to work every day for 30, 40 years. They paid into the system. And then when people, these politicians who are in the system, victimize the system, they get punished. Because those people aren't going to be punished. You think somebody with a $349,000 a year pension is going to care if you revamp the system? They're still going to be making more than these people made in 5 years without working. So if that doesn't irritate you, I don't know what's something. And people don't understand the system, because they're always condemning the system. And the reason the system's not solvent is for two reasons. The city doesn't put its fair share in most of the time, or fights against it, or these politicians with their giant pensions. So I had to say that. So I don't know, CJ, come on, give me a little bit on this one too.
Well, you know, the thing that gets me is I'm looking at some of these pensions. Most retired public school teachers were paid about $50,000 last year. But the top earner in this category chalked up $149,000.
And you want to bet he was an administrator?
School superintendents and teachers from Athol to Rentham had annual pensions of $209,000 to $400. That was the teacher on Nantucket. A teacher on Nantucket's getting $400. I think that might be a mistype. I think it might be $400,000.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, well, again.
And retired toll collectors get between 61 and 56 on the high side, but some poor bugger on the low side is only getting $9,959 a year.
Yeah, but I'm glad you picked that one, and you read that bullet, because again we see politics. Again, $61,000 pension, that's 80%, which means they were making probably in the 80s, low 80s. You get 80 grand for collecting quarters and dollars. Yes, you do. You know why? How do you become a toll collector in the state of Massachusetts? You know some politician. You don't get those kind of jobs unless you know somebody. And again, politics. It's not the guy picking up trash in sub-zero weather when we did have trash collection without privatizing it. Not the everyday person who works in City Hall and has been working here for 25 years and doesn't make $35,000 yet, and our city administrators get $40,000 and $20,000 pay raises, but they've been working for 25 and 30 years and they're making $28,000, $30,000 a year. That's the problem with the system. It is not the average everyday worker. And as the politicians always do, they penalize the people who did it the right way. It's just like the disability retirements. They pick a guy who got off on a disability with a bad back, and he wins a Mr. California contest because he's lifting weights every day. And what do? They try to take the disability pension away from somebody who was legitimately injured in a line of duty. They don't take just his pension away, and I've always said that. Even when I was active, and I used to say that all the time. If somebody's abusing the system, by all means, prosecute them. As a matter of fact, we went another step farther. There were numerous instances when our own attorney told the city, if an individual is guilty, we are not going to try to get him off. But we're going to make sure that the punishment suits the crime. There should be progressive discipline in certain cases. We even attempted to apply, I even got the Boston Fire Department's progressive discipline manual and gave it to the fire chief at the time, and it never got implemented. You know why? Because if you have a uniform disciplinary code, you have to discipline everybody uniformly, which means you can't give your friends a break. If everybody gets a 3-day suspension, it means your buddy's got to get a 3-day suspension. That's the reason we don't have tougher drunken driving laws, because drunk drivers might be a state rep or one of the... And even when you get caught red-handed, we saw what happened with the state police when a judge attempted to have the state police change the report to get his daughter off. So, you know, this is the problem with the system. The system is the guy who lives by the law every day, goes to work every day, pays in the system every day. He's the one that they bend over. Because,
well, you know, you bring up the uniform code and drunk driving. So I'm going to bring this up. Fall River District Fire Chief facing drunken driving charges after police chase. Is that really what we want for our fire department personnel? And it claims in the charges that he was operating without a license. He's a chief. He's a district chief. He drives a vehicle. How could he be operating without a license? How could he be operating without a license? And for Chief Lynch, and I'm going to call it out the way I hear it. Channel 7 had this, and you can find the story on YouTube. Channel 7 had it where Chief Lynch said, well, we have to support him. You don't have to support him. I know you're his friend. I know you're over there at Mesa 21 smoking cigars with him. Okay, and I know he's the vice president of the union, but guess what? This requires disciplinary action. And if he was operating a motor vehicle without a driver's license from this city, he increased our liability. And he should not have been doing that. And that's where this problem is. This is why people get sick and tired of these departments. We see it in the police department where there's accidents and drunk driving and everything else, and everything gets brushed under the rug. And what's that line from Terry Sullivan? He'll keep your head down and everyone will forget it.
Well, okay. First, the license. I don't know how accurate this. We're getting mixed things, but the way this article reads, you could read it to say that his license was suspended after this violation, but somebody is alleging that he had a previously suspended license. So, not sure about that. But as far as this is concerned, listen, I know the individual. I worked with him. I worked with him as a firefighter. I worked with him as a lieutenant. He was a good firefighter. He was a good lieutenant. He's a decent guy, I think, overall. But that's the problem. You can't just say that because he's okay, that he has to be not, he can't have consequences if, in fact, and he's entitled to due process, but obviously these are not just a DUI. He attempted to, you know, a state police officer, who I think actually somebody told me I actually may know him. He may be another Fall River resident, because I think he's the son of somebody that I went to school with, used to go to the boys club with, and he's a good friend of mine. And I know his son's a state police officer, and they said he was, you know, he aggressively backed up toward him. He refused to stop. And, you know, doesn't make him a bad person, but did he have You know, I mean, extremely poor judgment in this case, yes. But I'll tell you what disturbs me more is that, you know, they always talk about firefighters and police officers and city employees being held to a higher standard. Well, when it comes to firefighters and police officers, there is another standard. A lot of people don't understand, and I know that I believe, I'm almost sure, that Chief Lynch is a non-vet. So I had a friend of mine who's a Marine call me last night and said, what is he talking about? The man violated rules and regulations. You know, something has to happen. What do I say to him? But it's correct. The fire department is a quasi-military organization, and as is the police. And the reason they're like that is a very valid reason. You have to maintain order and discipline. You have to have a chain of command in order to effectively operate in an emergency situation, be it a combat situation in war or a combating of a fire or a active shooter incident. You absolutely have to have people who follow orders. It can't be debates. There cannot be, and the way you maintain that discipline is having rules and regulations, and as an officer at any rank, it is your, not only, it is your duty to enforce those regulations. That's why there are things that you can be charged with as a firefighter or a police officer or a member of the military that you cannot be charged with. He is not being charged with conduct unbecoming an officer. He is not being charged with conduct prejudicial to good order. But those are valid charges in a quasi and a military organization. Why? To maintain the structure. A general can't have his lieutenants just doing whatever they want in the middle of an action. They have a battle plan. The fire department has tactics and strategy. A lieutenant does not know what the overall strategy is. He has to execute the tactics that are designated by the chief. His overall plan is not up for discussion. He is in charge. And in order to maintain that discipline, you are required. You are required. It is your duty as an officer to maintain that discipline by enforcing the rules and regulations you swore to uphold on that department. And has it hurt sometime? Yes. I've had to write up my friends if they did something wrong, but I can't excuse them and then tell everybody else they have to abide by the rules. In the military, one guy wears a field jacket, everybody wears a field jacket. That's why they call it a uniform. These men are in a uniformed service. They don't wear clothes to work, they wear a uniform to work. And that uniform gives them an obligation. This is not a club. It's not a family. And you can talk about the foundation of a military or a quasi-military unit in order for it to function effectively. I'm not talking about a social interaction. I'm talking about a professional interaction. Is that chain of command? Is the absolute obedience of orders, which is another charge. Failure to obey a direct order. That is present in quasi and military organizations. So while I sympathize, and I know him, and as I said, he's a good guy. He was a good firefighter. He was a good lieutenant. But he screwed up. And if he's found guilty, he's going to have to suffer the legal consequences. But when it comes to the department, You can't just say that these things were not prejudicial to good order. You can't try to treat it like it's a family member who you think's got a problem and you're going to excuse them. It's a uniformed, not only a uniformed firefighter, an officer, a fire officer of the highest rank in the fire service. Unlike the police department, the fire service, the only people who wear gold are chief officers. It is a symbol of the obligation of that rank to lead, to be the leaders. I know in the police department, sergeants wear gold, and now we have people in some departments trying to wear gold, but that's not the tradition. And the fire service is based on tradition. And a lot of these new guys don't know this. And a lot of these new guys are not veterans. And they think being an officer is just about getting more money and once in a while giving an order. But when it comes time to give the hard ones, you can't do it. But that's not the way it works. It's unfortunate. Is this bad? Yeah. You know, but look, he's not the first guy to do this. He won't be the last guy to do this. But unfortunately, they are held to a higher standard. It's not, they don't put his name in, or they don't say man faces drunken driving charges. They've got his rank and the job he does, because they are held. And because they're in a uniform department, there are rules and regulations. And I don't think the rules and regulations have changed much since I served almost 39 years in that department. And I believe it starts by all members have to obey the rules and regulations of the department. And when you become a fire officer, you swear to uphold those rules and regulations. And it talks about your obligation to do the job and do it with the understanding that your actions reflect on the entire fire service. And look up my letter when Coogan became chief. I ended it with MacArthur's speech at a paraphrase. He didn't talk about family, because, you know, it's nice, the great euphemism, this is a brotherhood, it's a family. Wasn't much brotherhood when they made Coogan chief. They wanted his head because they didn't get promotions. And they were right. Does this make Ambrose a bad guy? Absolutely not. He's a good guy. I like him. But are there consequences for actions? Yeah. And what did MacArthur say? He didn't say family. He said duty, honor, country. That's the military credo. And you're in a quasi-military organization. That's what you have. You have duty. You have to have honor. And in this case, it's city. So, you know, I wish him the best. I really hope things work out for him. And I think that, you know, I think he's man enough to accept I think he's man enough. I almost know it, but I could never make an absolute, but I think he's man enough to accept the consequences of his actions. And I know he knows what he did was wrong. But, you know, he's not the first person to make a mistake. He won't be the last person to make a mistake. But let's not make a mistake of trying to just look for an excuse, make a rationalization. Accept the consequences and deal with it. And that's what he's going to have to do. And in my opinion, that's what the fire department's going to have to do. Well, you know, I don't, you know, and you know, I pissed them off before, but you know, you know, if I was there, I would be saying the same thing. You know, the idea is you do have a set of rules and regulations, and if you think I'm just talking the talk, go back and look in the training division and find out the template they use for writing up a fire officer. Because when I was a district chief, I wrote up the treasurer of the union, who was also a fire lieutenant, for disobeying a... No one understands more. Execute my duties.
My thing is, I'm just hoping that Chief Lynch acts accordingly, and he doesn't go with this, we need to support him, comment. I think that was a very poor comment to make.
Maybe, hopefully he was saying that in a general context, because
Right.
I support him too. I hope he, whatever issue he had, and I hope he, I hope he gets past this and continues. As I said, he's a good guy. I worked with him. This is not theoretical. I worked with him as a firefighter when he first came on the job. He was a good firefighter. He was a good lieutenant, but you make a mistake, you gotta accept this society has become the society of excuses on all levels. Every time Johnny does something wrong, well, Johnny is, he was stressed out because you didn't let him wear the shirt he wanted to wear and blah, blah, blah. This is a different scenario. This is a chief officer. This is a firefighter. Uniform, as I said, it's a uniform department. You have to have discipline. You have to have obedience of orders, and anything that undermines that is not acceptable, and you have to do what you got to do. Are you going to take pleasure in doing this? Absolutely not. But I hope Chief Lynch meant that in the context of, do you support him? Listen, I would give him any kind of help I could. The only help I could give him if I was a union president was, look, accept the responsibility. Whatever precipitated these actions, try to get by it, and we don't know what personal issues or whatever, but they fundamentally become irrelevant in this situation. They fundamentally become irrelevant, because now what's relevant is what happened, accepting the consequences, and getting by it. Not trying to excuse it away, because then how's the general public going to say? What do we hear about police cover-ups and about cover-ups for this? You can't do this. And obviously, I feel bad for him, because I know that he's a decent guy, and I know he does a good job, and it's too bad. But the fact is, this happened, and we have to deal with it. And is he entitled to due process? Absolutely. But this is a pretty... this wasn't just, he got pulled over. Attempting to, I don't think the state police officer is gonna be lying about it. I don't think the fact that he was driving around with no tires, he made that up. I'm sure they're gonna be able to prove this. But the fact is that, look, okay, I've seen people drive around with no tires. I've seen people get stopped. Does that make him, a horrible person? No, he's a guy who did what he did. Accept it, move by it. And if there's any advice I could give him, and I would have given it to him as the president of the union, is, we'll give you all the help we can give you, but you gotta, unfortunately, you did what you did. You gotta go through and accept what it is. Plead your case, take the responsibility, and get by it.
But, the thing is that, Jason Burns said that there's no disciplinary action pending, and that's...
Pending.
Pending, correct.
Pending.
And that's fine. But this is the union vice president that we're talking about here. He is friends with the chief, which creates some problems sometimes.
But it shouldn't. See, that's the key.
Right,
it shouldn't, because as an officer, unfortunately, comes with the pins. You don't get the extra pay for doing everything the easy way. That's why in the regular military, there are rules against fraternizations between officers and enlisted men, just because of that.
I hear you.
Hey, good luck.
Yep. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on Friday. Have a great day.